Okay then. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's that guy. You didn't know, man. It's blue as it gets. Like it or hate it. You already know. Back with that Giants fandom to share with everybody else out there who's sharing the Giants fandom out there. Nothing special this episode. Just we got episode one of the Hard Knocks on HBO that we're going to be doing for our preseason here. Well, not the preseason. I'm sorry, off season. Is what they're covering. But we got our first premiere episode. Man, it's been a long time coming for the Giants being on Hard Knocks. Me as myself, man, I've been a fan of the team for a long time, of course, but I've always been a fan of Hard Knocks, the show as well. Thought it was always shot well and narrated well and filled with a lot of good info and insight, just about the little things outside of the game, that we get to watch and everything. 'Cause that's pretty much cut and dry a lot of the time. You win a football game, score points, defense does all the stuff they do and everything. But Hard Knocks has always been a different take on a view of the NFL for fans who might have interest in the inner workings with the front office and coaching and not just necessarily the players themselves, but insight on the players, bubble players, guys trying to make a roster, shit like that. That really appeals to some audiences when they watch that show, and I'm probably one of those people that like that when they do watch the show. But this season for us, the off season thing, we're covering more of the draft and maybe a little bit of the contract discussions that were had around Saquon and a bit of Daniel. I don't know how much we'll actually get around Daniel. We should get equal, share of info because both contracts are going around. Uh, Discussions going on at the same time as well as Dexter Lawrence in ways too. So probably a little bit on him maybe. But it's what I was gonna say here is the show itself though, is our episode here, introduction, is we got to see pretty much, what it was. As far as Saquon, I guess would be the main, well, say the main sticking points or the main, you know, threads of the episode and stuff like that were probably Saquon, a little bit of his conduct discussion, not really Saquon himself, recorded on air and stuff like that. But just more of Joe Shane, and some of the staff in their meetings, Tim McDonald and Brown, the assistant GM, things like that. Yeah, just a few of those guys. Speaking of, another guy who was in there. The names of the front office staff, I'm not just right on top right now, but many voices were speaking up just in general, but mainly around Barkley's value and stuff like that in our position. So we heard mainly a little bit on Daniel's recovery, which was nice to see. Even if you have critiques about Daniel and his game, there's time here. He's still a human being. He's still a person. We still hope for good things for him and his while here and everything. That and while gone, of course, but while here particularly, we try to support him in all those ways that we can as fans and wanting him to do better, even though he might have things to say about his play. That's just the way the world works. And football works, NFL works, and the media works around it. I'm not a part of the media like that. I'm my own private source channel here that I'm just sharing opinions and analysis and banter and good talk and vibe. And the Giants and other NFL teams when I feel like it. That's it. But with that, we saw a little bit about Daniel and getting in touch with more of him going through his recovery stages after his knee surgery on the ACL, which is a battle for any player. We follow stories like Cruz when he was coming back from the patellar tendon. I believe his injury was a big story for us, and just trying to watch as he was being supported by the team and how we tried to send him the good vibes, get healthy and things like that, and get back out there. But for Daniel, it's kind of that same thing. Just a little bit on that. It wasn't much of an episode of that really. And yeah, and then Sean speaking on a little bit at the end of the episode, how things were moving towards an emphasis of Daniel in the offense, which goes further support some of the things I feel like I've been saying about the team over the last 2 years or so, at least. Um, just as far as uh, what the emphasis of the offense may be, and as far as the responsibility on the offense's production and what we expect out of the QB position in general. He spoke a little about that in the episode and how it was kind of Daniel's team. This kind of went to with to talk about his emphasis, at least for Barkley's value here with the team and things like that, and how he saw, which I felt was probably a little undervalued, and probably it's plain as day by past happenings of the contracts that have been signed in the offseason, that Barkley's value was valued somewhere that probably was a little bit more than what the Giants were trying to offer him, even with a franchise tag, which is at like 12 million. I've always felt that around that 13, 14 range. And when you think higher than that 14, 15 range, you're thinking incentive based in some ways with that. So base probably was about 13, 14 for him. 14, we're talking incentives. 14 and a half, you're talking incentives into his contract for 500 yards, 1,000 yards, 500-yard receiving, 1,000-yard receiving, whatever it may have been. So it's not complicated when we talk about the contract situations that were surrounding Saquon and the options that could have been taken, and how that fits into the salary cap as a whole, when we understand how the salary cap increases yearly based on team revenues throughout the league, everybody's revenues, and they always go up in revenues. So the salary cap always pretty much goes up. And so we understand these things. This is not that new for people who are into front office things or the Giants over these years, but it is insight that we have gotten from the show for people who aren't as up to date about it. It may have had some thoughts about others that shared opinions about it sometimes. See, this helps us, even those that feel certain ways, because it helps them, kind of get an understanding of what we understand the game to be, even though we're not necessarily sitting inside of these offices with these people and getting the paychecks and stuff like that these people are getting. And, not say they're not experienced or deserving their positions. Not, absolutely not. These guys, a lot of them obviously do have proper um, in routes into their positions that they've gotten. And that goes for everybody that's sitting in the office, including Shane and Dave Ball, etc. But yeah, but to say that, that room is that room. And even outside of that, the room is still room for differing thoughts and opinions regarding the value of players. Not to say that there weren't voices in there, like Tim McDonald was one that was showing some, at least what we've seen so far, was showing some real questions asked on what we would be giving up a talent such as a talent that we gave up at the position, no matter what the name is, it's a talent in general. Um, but yeah, so there's voices in there. What else did we really talk about? Yeah, there's not much more that we could have really gotten. We got a little bit about Shane, his journey from Buffalo, and that's good stuff, good vibe and things like that. So we don't really talk about much about that. That's just good stuff to see. A little bit about Bowen and how he came here as a defensive coordinator, and we didn't get too much, but we did get some insight on some of his emphasis as far as the scheme, which we got a little bit of during the OTAs and stuff. But his emphasis on the front seven, namely the four guys up front from Dex, Kayvon Burns, and the depth players like Aziz and Nuchez, and etc. And yeah, and interior guys as well sitting next to Dex. Just the emphasis of what the defensive scheme is being like up front and how we should expect more intensity and more play action, at least from up front. 470, talk about hands in the dirt and everything. So we might be back to hands in the dirt. Is that a 3-4? Is that a 4-3? I don't really know what to say. What his scheme is. Schemes are all mixed up, but if he's talking hands in the dirt type thing, man, and four down men, four in line, and that's talking, straight hand tuck, Bushi, uh, JPP, Keith Hamilton, and a bunch of other names in there, as well as that front seven. Yeah. And that's pretty much for the episode there, right? Not much else. I'm sure we'll get a lot more in the next couple of episodes here. And I'll be and enthralled to watch them and find out more of not just around Barkley, not just around DJ and stuff like that, but just the insights of other players. Brian Burns, of course, coming in. Maybe they talk a little bit about Dex, Kayvon. Possibly they'll talk about a little bit, and Corey K, free agent signings and things like that. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much what we'll send it off right now. We won't talk too much more about opinions about if Barkley should be here just off this one episode. But we will talk a little bit. I already did talk about how the Giants seem to. Oh, I gotta before I leave out, I'll touch on one more thing too. How the Giants kind of viewed Saquon's value to the team and overall roster construction and things like that. Because Schoen was kind of putting his value matching up against not players that aren't good like Eckler or Swift or Jacobs and sector like this. We talk about some of the better backs like Jacobs or Eckler, etc. Just you know what I'm saying here. I hope just about that, and a little bit with that last thing here is John Mara. First real inside words, even though he knows people are watching about his appreciation is what we'll call it, right? Of Saquon Barkley, his value to the team, not only for the franchise itself as being a face-forward player, charitable and all that good stuff, but on the field itself. And we understood how we kind of talked about Daniel here when he said no one's been treated worse, and just hearing from Mr. Mayer about in a perfect world. But when it comes to speaking on Barkley's situation here, his time here, it's just it's kind of telling for me. Is it new for me? Surprising for me? No, it's just kind of more telling for me of how I felt the team has kind of valued not just position players, because it's not just about positional players, but the talent and the contributions to talent as making to the franchise and to the team, both on the field and off the field. Yeah, it's kind of gives me a little more feeling on him. Do I feel any new type of way about him? No, not really. I feel bad about him or some type of way about him. No, not really. Um, it's just more Mr. Mara and Steve Tisch because he's not the only one up there to name as far as the ownership with the whole team and stuff like that. So that's it is what that is right there. Yeah. So he was there. He wasn't really giving much pushback to how Joe Shane was showing was I say his name both ways, um, was presenting the position or Barkley's value and into terms of the future. But then again, at the end or at some points, Joe Shane did emphasize how we have other skill position players, which has always been the case since Barkley has been here. I've always said this that he's not just the only talent from the first video I dropped on my channel. He's not the only guy here when we talk about him, but he is one of the only guys, or the only guy, or was the only guy, the only guy that was not, kind of trapped behind what the QB was going to provide as far as passing the ball to him and shit like that. But he did emphasize how we do have talents from all the receivers that I've named before, and how Dan would have to take advantage of those, and how he wasn't going to be paying Daniel and paying a $12 million quarterback at the same time, which is okay. Whatever. Just don't try to play Barkley himself or the position player, but he was providing the talent himself on what he's actually doing around here because we understand when we go into the finer details and stats how much of a presence Barkley meant for Jones and the run game just in general meant for Jones and him playing well. It's really directly 100% tapped at this point. He's got 5 years in the league. I'm not going to speak too much on that right now. We got plenty of episodes to go. But yeah, that's pretty much that on that. But we got to hear Joe Shane did understand that Daniel has some responsibility to what's going to take place this year. Now it's really about how Daniel performs, no matter what the talent is around him. As far as that skill position players, namely, because we didn't speak too much on the O line, if at all, really, in this episode. I think that's a fair takeover of that. Brush over everything, and appreciate everybody who might have stopped by and watched this, checked it out. If you've watched the episode, you already know a lot of this stuff, or maybe you have, I don't know if you took a different takeaway from it, man. You might have specifically took a different takeaway about it with Mara regarding that, but that's okay. That's cool. Um, I think the contract signings and everything explains the value to the market for a talent such as Barkley and a position player of Barkley, um, to the league in general. And whether a team has the money to spend or not is another conversation. But to try to put it off like, just come out and say you can't afford them. Basically, what we should have just said, right? All right. Well, that's it, man. It's your boy, Blues It Gets. Dropping it one time for that Giants fandom, as you know. Like it or hate it, it is what it is. Go ahead and comment if you feel like it. Appreciate anybody who does. And we take notice to the things that we say and how they are out and about too. So don't think that's changed from when I dropped that first episode either. That's real talk. And but again, nobody around here is paid to say anything. Right then, 100.